Okay, great. I'll go ahead and get started as people are still joining. Thank you guys all for joining us today. My name is Christina Ung, and I'm with the marketing team. I help run these weekly training and thought leadership sessions. I wanted to make sure that you all are aware of our upcoming manufacturing innovation series workshops. We did a few this year, and I think we did about 6 in different cities across the country. And right now we have a few planned virtually as well as one planned in San Jose. So I dropped a link in the chat if you'd like to check it out, see how you can meet other manufacturing leaders and kind of just a casual happy hour to talk about your business plans, what's working, what's not, and come together as an industry. So today's topic for KVA, this is our last KVA of 2023. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. If this is your first KETIV Virtual Academy, welcome. And if this is your, I think we had 45 this year, so if this is your 45th, thanks for returning. Today's topic is on data management implementation with Tom Fitzgerald. So this is a 5-part series, and this is part 4 of that series. So you can check out the other sessions on our website. I also wanted to drop some resources that we have here in the chat as well to help you with your business. We have a few ebooks, white papers, whatever you may need. So be sure to check those out and check out the past sessions as well. If you have any questions during the session, please submit them via the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and we'll do our best to address them at the end. And again, all of these sessions are recorded and available at ketiv.com as well as on our website. So without further ado, I'll let Tom take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's KVA, where we're going to be talking about strategies for seamless data population. So this is an ongoing data management implementation series that we got going on here. My name is Tom Fitzgerald. I'm a Senior Technical Solutions Executive here at KETIV. Been at KETIV for 2 years now. Previous to that, I was at Autodesk for 10 years in a number of different consultant types of roles supporting our manufacturing customers. So I've been working within the 3D design space for 25 plus years, had my fingers in all sorts of different things within the manufacturing industry for 30 plus years, from an end user, shop floor person, welder, fabricator, designer, and now as a consultant. So I'm also a U.S. Army veteran, and in my free time, I'm a World War II historian. Love reading those books and watching documentaries. So, like I said before, this is an ongoing series around data management implementation. So in the first 3, we talked about how to plan your implementation, how to prepare your environment when it comes to installation and some of those other things you need to be concerned about relative to your data, preparing your data for data management. In our last episode, we talked about configuring the system in such a way that you're going to prepare it, lay the groundwork for what we're going to be talking about today, and that's populating your system. We've gone through the planning exercise, we've installed the system, we've configured the system, and now we actually want to populate the system so that it becomes a usable entity within our organization. Okay. So, recapping a couple of things from our previous conversations. Who's KETIV? What do we do? Well, we here at KETIV, we're a technology company. We partner with a lot of different companies to really focus on what we do around sales engineering and receiving estimates and working with engineering design, working with testing, simulation, and ultimately out to manufacturing. So we have a lot of different solutions, a lot of different experience working with our manufacturing companies, our customers, along all of those different elements, all those, what I call the 3 silos of estimating, engineering, and then manufacturing. What you're going to notice about this slide is even though we have very distinct, areas on the wheel here, specific to how they create information and consume information, our data management solution, our data management and security, is that common thread that kind of weaves its way through the different silos, if you will. And in the middle of all that, of course, is your IP as a company, right? What do you do around that IP? Data management is that shell around it to protect it and preserve it, where all these other areas are just entry points to access and utilize that information, okay? So data management, very, very important. I guess that's what we're trying to get at here. On this slide, the technology maturity matrix slide here, it's, we want to understand where you are as a company. Ultimately, every company wants to get up here to this level 4 optimized level in terms of, connecting systems, single source of truth, synchronizing information, reducing manual efforts, utilizing emerging technologies like AI and automation and things like that, right? So that's the ultimate goal where we all want to be. However, that's not where we all are today, right? So understanding where you are today relative to the maturity matrix allows us to understand what steps you need to take to go forward to ultimately achieve that optimized level, okay? So very important to understand, and I encourage you to reflect upon yourselves to understand where you are on the matrix here. This last slide, more visual representation as to the 3 silos I was talking about in terms of estimating and the tools that estimation and that group of individuals need to use, and then what about drafting, design, and engineering? What kind of tools and processes do they need in order to be successful, ultimately leading to manufacturing where we're physically creating that IP. The thing I want to point out here is Vault, or in this case, our data management solution, our PDM, spans across all 3 of these silos. There's always information being created from sales, information being created and consumed in engineering, and then information being consumed in manufacturing. Having a system to manage all of that information, all of that data, is what allows us to be much more productive in some of these other initiatives that we have within our business. Okay. So today's episode, what we're going to be talking about today specifically, around populating our system. We've done our planning, we've done our implementation in terms of getting the environment prepared, we've analyzed our data, we've documented our workflows. We are now ready to start putting a bunch of information inside of our system, so that way we can start reaping the benefits of having that system in the first place, okay? So we're going to touch on a couple of things. One thing I love to point out is Autoloader for Vault. Comes with Vault. It's a tool. If you're intending on using Vault as your PDM, you're going to have this utility available to you to be able to upload that information, okay? Different mass uploading capabilities. Leveraging and leaning on consultancy services like individuals here at KETIV, having a service or a company help you, guide you, support you in your journey of populating your system and uploading information into your system. We can also look at some on-demand loading options. So when you need to put information into the system at that particular moment, what can you do about it? And then lastly is testing your data testing. So regardless of what you do here in terms of your methodology to populate your system, specifically initially, you want to make sure that you're doing some testing. Get some information up there. Is it working well within your system? Is it working in a way that you expect it to work? And then, of course, once you have that confidence, then you can go with a much larger process of loading your data using some of these other methodologies. Okay, so the first one, population methodology in this case that I want to point out is Autoloader for Vault. So a couple things to know about Autoloader for Vault. Number one, it's free, comes with Vault. So if you purchase a license of Vault, you have this readily available to you, okay? It's a great validation utility. In one of the previous episodes, I showed how we could use Autoloader not to load data into the environment, but when we go through our preparation phase of analyzing our information, Autoloader can give us some information, some feedback about our data, so that way we can identify and start isolating where there may be some problem areas and what we can do about addressing those problem areas, okay? Autoloader is Microsoft friendly, and what I mean by that is if you have Word, Excel, PowerPoint, some of the other Microsoft specific file formats. Autoloader can work with those files too to get them up into your system. It's not just CAD data, not just Autodesk data, okay? It works great with folders and files. So if you want to identify a folder and you have 3,000 files in that folder, you can analyze that information using Autoloader and bulk upload it. Or if there's just one file or a handful of files, it's up to you how you want to use Autoloader. It's not just for mass uploading. You can even select just a single file and get it loaded into the vault if you wanted to, okay? One of the nice things about Autoloader is it can create our visualization files within Autodesk Vault. Now, inside of Vault, if I go over here to my Vault application, if I select on a particular component, so I have a file, this is a 3D file, I have this option to select this view, and then it shows me a thumbnail of this file. And in some cases, if there's a visualization file associated to it, I can view that file, that 3D file, here inside of the Vault. The reason why I'm bringing this up is, in this environment, I'm not looking at the 3D file itself. I'm not looking at the native file. What I'm actually looking at is a visualization representation of that file. And that is in the format of DWF, okay? So when you take information and you use Autoloader to bulk upload information, you have the opportunity to automatically generate those DWF visualization files that Vault relies upon in order to allow you to visualize that information in the context of Vault. Meaning, if it's Inventor data, I don't have to have Inventor on my machine in order to pan, zoom, rotate some of those models inside of Vault. Okay, so very useful feature, not only within Vault, but with an Autoloader to generate those DWFs as you need them. Also, multi-user functionality, meaning you could have many different individuals running an Autoloader, focusing on very specific areas of data that you have. So that way you're not interfering or colliding with one another, if you will. So you can have, many people analyzing data and then bulk uploading them. You don't have to rely upon one entry point from Autoloader to do that. This allows you to have a considerable amount of flexibility and control over what data you're analyzing and loading, as well as how fast you want to analyze and load it, okay? Obviously, if you have 10 machines analyzing data, that you're going to get through a lot more than if you have a single machine analyzing data, right? All right. So Autoloader, let's take a quick look at Autoloader real quick. Oh, I take that back. This is Vault. Autoloader, like I said, Autoloader is right here inside of when we load our 3D data when we load Vault onto our machine. In the data management folder, we get this Autoloader for Vault. And once that pops up here, it'll allow us to, here it is right here. It'll allow us to step through this, select a folder that we want to analyze. So if I just go through here and select a simple little folder, I can hit OK here, hit OK again, and now it's going to allow me to then scan this information. It's going to allow me to understand what was successful, where I might have problems. In this case, it identified some duplicates. If I want to export this out to, say, an Excel spreadsheet, I can. So it's a real quick way for me to analyze information and then understand what I want to do with that information to ultimately get it uploaded inside of the Vault. Okay. So I can also do this where I can remove, actually, I want to remove those files because they're duplicates. At which point, now I have some files identified here. And the next thing I want to do is I want to load those into the Vault, right? So now I can log into my Vault. Doesn't matter. Here we go. Oh, well, I guess I don't have my Vault account set up here. Anyway, you would log into Vault. Once you have yourself logged in, then you can start mapping where you want this information to go inside of the Vault, hit OK, creates those DWFs, bulk upload to Vault, and now you're well on your way. So really interesting utility in terms of being able to analyze information and bulk upload your information inside of the Vault. Okay, so I love pointing out Autoloader because like I said before, it's free and available to anybody that wants to use it when it comes to loading information into the Vault. What about other mass uploading or mass loading types of methodologies? So another tool that you can use to bulk load information is Inventor Task Scheduler. So a lot of the times we see this in a lot of situations where companies that are interested in using Autodesk Vault or PDM like that is they're also using other Autodesk products. In a lot of cases, they're using Autodesk Inventor simply because, in my opinion, Inventor and Vault work together like peanut butter and jelly. You know, Inventor creates all these files with all these different associations, very hard to control and manage outside of a PDM. Vault works great with Inventor. You load information and manages relationships. You can see all these associations and files and visualizations and properties and everything else like it associated to that. So having a mechanism inside of Inventor to be able to load information is also pretty important. Okay, so if you're using Inventor with Vault, I encourage you to take a look at Inventor Task Scheduler. There's a way to be able to select files and folders to bulk upload those into the Vault as well. You also have drag and drop capability inside of the Vault. Primarily, I shouldn't even say primarily, you should only do this with non-associative files. And what I mean by that, non-associative files, is if we look at, say, Inventor, if we look at an Inventor assembly, if I selected an Inventor assembly here, I can identify, or it will list to me what is related to this assembly, meaning all of these individual components down here is what makes up this assembly right here, okay? So there's relationships between the individual files and the assembly file, okay? Similarly, if I go to this file, I can find out where that file is being used. This file, say it was a standard component, could be used in hundreds of different assemblies. It would list out all those different assemblies where this file is being used, okay? The point of the matter is there's relationships, there's associations between these different files. Now, if I wanted to drag and drop something, I can do that inside of Inventor, or rather inside of Vault, simply by going to Windows Explorer, identifying the file that I want to load, dragging it, and then identifying and dropping it into a particular folder where I want that to be. Once I do that, Vault here is going to say, okay, here's your file, here's where you want to put it, here's some other options here. I'm just going to select OK, and now it's going to take that file and then copy it into the Vault so that way I can access it here. Okay, so here's my new file. I get some information about it. Here's my file name, who created it, when it was checked in. You'll see that was just a moment ago. Okay, so I can use Windows Explorer, identify files, grab them, drag them, and drop them into wherever I want them within Vault. I don't have to use a utility like Autoloader or Task Scheduler in order to do that. However, going back over to my PowerPoint, it is important to understand that you want to do that with non-associative files, meaning don't do that with CAD files. I would probably, you can do it with AutoCAD files because most of the time they're static files. They don't have associations unless, of course, you're using X references. If you are using external references, then don't use this methodology, okay? Use Task Scheduler, use Autoloader. All right, so drag and drop capability in order to populate your Vault. If you have a lot of files in a single folder inside of Windows Explorer, you can do a shift select, grab as many as you want, and then push them over. Things to understand, though, is if you're going to use drag and drop method, you can only drag from one location inside of Windows Explorer to one location inside of the Vault. So You have to be very deliberate in terms of what information you're capturing and where you want it to reside inside of the vault. Okay. One of my favorite ways of populating your PDM is hiring a consultancy service like KETIV. We have a lot of experience, we have a lot of exposure, work with many different companies at various sizes and complexities. So we've seen a lot of different situations, and we can lean on those experiences to be able to provide you as a customer the best path forward, and allowing you to avoid as many of those issues and obstacles as you possibly can. Okay, so you can lean on our experience to provide that insight. We have streamlined processes that we have here in place. I mean, because we've done this so many times, we know the proper steps that it takes. And we've identified where some of those steps are a little bit more problematic and developed our own methodologies to be able to facilitate getting past some of those steps ourselves. We also have, and not just us, but a lot of different companies, we also have support contracts. What does this mean to you? Well, maybe you buy the software from us and you want to do the implementation yourself, but if you get in a sticky situation, is there somebody that you can call? Absolutely. So we can provide you a support contract to get you through those particular situations, and even long past you're done with your implementation. It's already in production. You're already leveraging it. Maybe you have some changes that you need to make. Well, you can rely upon us and that support contract to once again help you through that process and make that a little bit easier. We also have facilitation utilities that we have available to us that maybe other companies don't. And particularly, and especially you as a customer, we have some utilities, in this case, DTU, it's a data transfer utility that is made available to us to be able to analyze information, organize information, and then load that information into your system the way that you want to see it, making sure that we're accommodating a number of different things in terms of hierarchy, property values, property information, things along those lines. So a consultancy service has a lot of benefits and a lot of things that they have made available to them that you as a customer may not have available. So in a lot of instances, working with a consultancy service like KETIV can really make a huge difference. All right. On-demand loading. So a couple of things that I did show you one way of doing on-demand loading, and that's drag and drop, right? So as you need a file inside of the vaults, you find it within Windows Explorer, you drag it, you drop it, it goes inside of the vault, and now anybody who has access to the vault now has access to that file, okay? But there's also two other ways that you can add information to the vault. That is on demand, so when you need it, and maybe it's just a small amount of files. Those instances, one is here inside of Vault. So from the Vault application itself, I do have the capability of adding files. I can also go to a folder and right-click and select Add Files. And this will allow me, from context of Vault, to go outside, find the files that I need out on my network, on my systems, and then pull that information into my Vault, okay? Now, the reason why I'm saying that, why I'm saying pull information in the Vault very specifically, is because Vault doesn't know where files came from. Vault doesn't know where how files were created, okay? It is just it's a data management utility. It's a tool. It's a repository, right? So Vault doesn't know if a file was created in Inventor or in SolidWorks or in Word or Excel or wherever. It just knows what its file extension is. So anything related to file relationships, like if you're talking about Inventor files where you have assemblies and you have individual components, those relationships that exist, Vault doesn't know that they exist when you're just going out and reaching out and grabbing files and pulling them in, okay? So this methodology of using add files and then browsing out and selecting files that you want to add is fine, but you really only want to do this with non-associative files, okay? Files that don't have relationships. Because if I select OK here, I get the same dialog box. It's going to tell me where it's going to go. It's going to tell me what it is, and then it's going to put it inside of the vault. Okay. So going back over here to my PowerPoint, that's using the Vault Client app in order to pull information into the vault. Okay. The preferred method of doing it is using the authoring tool to push information into the vault. Okay. So if I go over here to my CAD application and I open up in an assembly here, you're going to notice that this assembly makes up a bunch of different individual components. And then I have connectivity to my vault from my authoring tool, from my CAD application, that gives me some idea and some exposure to what's actually going on inside of the vault. Okay. So say, for instance, I go and I want to upload a different assembly. Okay. Let me go and produce something real quick here. So I produced a design using some level of automation. That's a perk of doing some of these live demonstrations sometimes, right? So I have some information. Here's my vault. This does not exist inside of the vault. So I have some feedback from my vault add-in right here. And if I right click and say check in, this is going to give me some additional functionality that the other methods did not give me. Number one, it shows me where it's going to go. It also shows me that I have this assembly, and it's showing me my dependencies. So in this case, Inventor, which is my authoring tool, is telling Vault, hey, here's my assembly, here's its children, go ahead and manage these relationships once I pass this to you. So I'm pushing information from my authoring tool into the Vault, as opposed to reaching out and pulling information in the Vault from the Vault application itself. Then I go ahead, okay, and then it goes through the process of sending this information to the Vault. And then once I get over into my Vault application, I can hit refresh, and then I'm going to see this information exist here in my new folder. And then here's my assembly, and then here's my file relationships, okay? So going back over here to my PowerPoint, so there's 3 different ways that you can add information to the Vault on demand when you need it. 1, pull information in from the Vault client. Number 2, push information from the authoring tool. Number 3, drag and drop. The preferred method is to use the authoring tool as much as you possibly can. Okay. Now, the last thing that we want to talk about here when it comes to taking information that doesn't exist in your PDM and getting it populated up into your PDM is testing. So I showed you a number of different ways that you can get information into your system. But one of the things that you want to do before going full bore and just load everything that you possibly can, start out with a small subset. Try a few different file types first and foremost. Try a few different methods of uploading that information. And then once it's in there, start going through your workflow testing. Does this behave the way that I want it to behave? Do we have visibility? Is the security model working? Run it through the different life cycle stages just to make sure that everything that's supposed to be functions the way it's supposed to be. When you're going through your data loading and your testing, load by dependencies, meaning if there's information that needs to be utilized downstream or that has it is going to be used by some other system, go ahead and load that information first and foremost. Do you have any live ongoing projects that need to be addressed? Get that information into the Vault first, right? Which aligns with the next bullet point in terms of loading by business needs. Who needs to see that information first and foremost? How should it be loaded so that way those individuals can access that information as fast as they possibly can, okay? And then, once again, document your results. As you're going through this process, make sure you're documenting what worked well, what didn't work well, what problems came up, how should you address those problems. The more documentation that you do during this process, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to, number 1, scale, maintain, and potentially interface with other systems as well. Okay. So in summary, for today's episode of populating your system, what do you need to do about populating it? You know, the first thing that I could say is really you're going to want to lean and leverage expertise. Go to those consultancy services. Come to KETIV. Allow us to shed some light as to some of those best practices, some of those methodologies you want to use in order to get that information from where it currently resides to your PDM, into your data management solution. Understand your dependencies. As I identified with a couple of different methodologies, there's things you can do with non-associated files that you can't do with associated files, like some of the drag and drop functionality, some of the pulling information into your vault as opposed to pushing information. So where do those dependencies lie will dictate the method you use to load that data. Third bullet point, this is a good one. Good data in, good data out. So going back to your planning and your preparation stages, make sure that you got good data. Make sure it's organized appropriately, that it's healthy data. There's no conflicts with it. It's not corrupt. If you put bad data in your system, that's all you're going to get out is bad data. So make sure it's good before it goes in. If you don't make sure it's good before it goes in, at least know where the bad data is. And the reason why I say this is because there are some features inside of Vault that can facilitate a repair process or your repair strategy. But first, you have to know where the problem areas are, and then you can understand what's the best way to contend with those areas. Once again, lean on your test environment. I highly recommend once you get your configuration set up, you get your environment set up, you have your test environment set up, do as much as you possibly can in there first, make sure it's working, then go ahead and then send it over to your production environment. And the last bullet point, I've been touching on this in the entire series so far, is making sure that you're set reasonable expectations. Knowing how much information you have, knowing how much bad data you have, having a good consensus as to your data is going to allow you to understand, is this going to take 2 months? Is this going to take 10 months? Is this going to take 2 years? Setting those expectations in terms of your timeline, how many resources you're going to need, how much it's going to cost. If you don't do your due diligence up front and understand how to set those expectations, you may potentially be setting yourself up for failure. And that's the last thing that we here at KETIV want you to do. So with that being said, I'm going to open it up here for Q&A. If you have any questions as to what we talked about in today's episode of this KVA, please, here's your opportunity. And I'm looking forward to answering any questions.